Good morning, Sandie.
Hello.
Thanks very much for agreeing to do a piece to camera for our conference, given the unfortunate sort of coincidence that the National HIA conference clashes with the ADASS conference.
I'm really delighted that you've taken the trouble to get a piece. ADASS is a very strong supporter of HIA agencies, and so really delighted to be able to contribute even from a distance. So thank you.
I'm interested to know what you feel about the term closer integration with housing, health and care. And I guess our audience in the HIA community would be wanting to know what that means practically. What would be seen by the member of the public, the vulnerable person in their home? How would politicians see it? And I guess what I'm interested in is what impact this will have on commissioning and subsequent supplier contract arrangements.
If I start with what people will see in a closer integration of housing, health and care services, I think the answer that we're all searching for is that people will see a seamless response to their care need, whatever it is. And we all know, those of us who've been in the business a long time, that housing is an integral part of somebody's care, because being able to live independently at home is critical and crucial to the care that they're able to enjoy and the independence that they're able to enjoy. So I would certainly see that the bill gives an opportunity and a restatement of housing, care and health to come together. We know that we should always have been doing that, and so what we've got to make sure that this bill and the subsequent act helps us to do is to really make it a reality this time. And I think one of the critical things is bringing health and care together enables health to have a better understanding of the importance of housing and the importance of investing in options to help prevention and to help people to stay at home for longer. So really the commissioning question is a really important one, because what we want to do is bring health and care commissioning together, which includes housing as well. And there may well be opportunities in the future for single contract management. Indeed, in a lot of places that already happens. And so what we want to do is see the best everywhere. And certainly politicians being able to see that their pound is being used in the very best way across all the three major players in helping people to live at home successfully.
Okay, can I ask, what extra impact do you think the care bill will make for Leeds and more widely once it goes onto the statute book? For example, are we likely to see a radical shift towards greater use of self-assessment?
Well, to answer the first question about the impact, it is going to be huge, because what we're going to see is a much wider entitlement for people to come into the purview, if you like, of the care agencies. So many more people who are currently self-funding now coming into the horizon, if you like, of the statutory agencies, helping to assess their needs and also assess how much financial support people may be able to anticipate, and also providing advice and guidance about financial circumstances as well as care circumstances. So it's about bringing those together. I'm quite sure that because this is a huge new duty for local authorities, at a time when funding is very, very tight, the tightest ever, that we will see new and innovative ways of engaging the public with their care arrangements. And part of that might be around self-assessments, whatever that might mean. Some of it might be around local authorities delegating their responsibilities in terms of other agencies helping people in terms of assessment. But whatever happens, what we will need to see is individuals, whether they're existing self-funders or people who need support from the public purse now, that we need people to be more in charge of their own arrangements, to, if you like, self-manage and self-care. find out the things that they can do to make their lives easier and make their lives a better quality of life. Because we know that with the amount of money available, with the new duties and responsibilities, the way that the Care Bill will be successfully implemented is alongside citizens, seeing what their role is in terms of seeing the benefits and the assets that they bring, as well as partners and the public purse supporting people in the very best way that we can.
Okay. Are there any parts of the bill which you think will be especially challenging, and indeed elements where you think HIAs have got a greater role to play? I'm thinking particularly around the provision of information and advice, not just simple signposting.
Well, certainly the big challenges in the bill, as I've already mentioned, is about the funding of it. And none of us are completely sure that the anticipated impact assessment and the amount of money that's available to us is actually going to be enough. Which does mean that when we're looking at things like information and advice alongside every other part of the bill, that we need to make sure that we're implementing it in the very best way. And information and advice is a really good question, because there will be some evaluation that's needed about whether we want a small number of very big providers to provide information and advice to people, which would be more than signposting, or whether we want lots of providers who can provide help at that earlier level. And I think that the jury's still out on that, and we're still discussing it at both national level and also in localities. The new duties will require us to ensure that people have information about their care entitlement, but also their funding entitlement. Some authorities I know are beginning to look at whether that's a new sort of service that we should be commissioning, because it's about bringing finance and care together in a way that probably we haven't done before. Others, I think, are still thinking it through, and indeed there's some national work going on with the Care Bill implementation teams, thinking about whether there are some national products, because of course many people now are using the web and the internet, and it could be that the Department of Health might commission some national work. Whatever happens, we need to be making sure that people at an individual level know that they can get individual help. And so that probably will mean that HIAs will have some involvement, because they're in touch with a lot of people, and we want to make sure that they know where to get the best help. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they would automatically be considered as a major provider. I think it will depend. Partly it will depend on what's happening nationally, partly it will depend on what's already in existence locally. So, for example, I'd just like to do a quick plug for Leeds. I know I'm here for ADASS, but a quick plug for Leeds. We do have an electronic directory of services that our local care and repair service manage on our behalf. The fabulous thing about that is that now that we're working much more closely with the health service, the GPs absolutely love it, and they want to extend it and extend its reach. And so that you could see that that might become something that would be a health, housing and care resource for the city. Now, whatever's available nationally, we would be foolish to be losing that. We want to build and develop that. And my guess is that all sorts of different localities will be having those sorts of considerations as they go forward. So the one thing we do want to make sure that we do together is that we actually and actively provide the right sort of information for the public so that they can get help when they need it most. And we know that we don't always succeed in that very well at the moment, so we want to continue to improve.
Well, I'm 73 years old now, and I haven't had the best of health, but it's my husband particularly that's in bad health at the moment. He's got heart failure, so he really needs, the house to be kept warm and hot water and etc. So it was a wonderful thing that happened when we found out we could get this help last year, beginning of the year. Well, last December we had an interview about getting help with our council tax, and when the lady was here, she showed me some leaflets, and on it said, one of the things we might be able to get if we got pension credit was help with big bills. So I just said to her, well, we've just had this massive bill this morning for the gas boiler. We needed to have it renewed, or it was going to cost, nearly £1,000 or something like that. I wondered if we could have any help towards it. No, I didn't think we would be able to, but she said, well, I'll ring up somebody. And she rang up Care and Repair, and I think it was probably Sharon she spoke to somebody there and said it would be possible with our circumstances. So it was amazing, really. It was just like an answer to our prayers, really.
And how long ago was that?
Well, it was last December that I actually got in contact, and I think it was January when something started to be done after the holidays. They came and we had to sort of use kettles, and we couldn't really use the hot water very much until we had it repaired. So we really needed it doing. So it was a really big help. It just said it was about things you could get help with when you were on low benefit. Not much money coming in, and that was one of the things it said we might get some help with big bills. So, but this lady that was interviewing me knew about Care and Repair, so it was her that actually rung straight through and found out then that we possibly could get some help. Well, I think when you came through from Care and Repair, she told me what help we could have towards it. So, and she left me a booklet about if we want to get in touch again about any more help. She'd ask questions about what other problems we had, and one was about the central heating, and they actually, when they came to do the water heater, they actually put us thermostats on all the radiators and things like that, which was a big help as well. So they're very, very caring and very, wanted to help us as much as they could, really, when they did. Well, the care was excellent. I mean, the young men that came, you couldn't have faulted them. They worked really hard and efficiently, and it was, it was a pleasure to have them working here, and they didn't, they really, really were good workers, and it made a massive impact on our lives because we got hot water back again, and also we know if we need any more help, we can get in touch with Care and Repair again. They're pretty good with our council tax. We actually went. There was some sort of mistake in what we were paying, and we went up in January, and they really did give us a lot of help towards that as well. But that was, but really, unless you know where to look, sometimes you don't know which telephone. You've got to look either in telephone directory or something like that. So, we'd never heard about Care and Repair, so we couldn't have applied there because I didn't know anything about it until we read this leaflet. So I think we do get help to quite a lot from the council, but you all need that bit extra when you're getting old and you don't exactly know how to apply for things sometimes. Oh yeah, well at the moment I'm not too bad at filling forms and things, but there might come a time when I need help. But my husband certainly couldn't do it on his own, so. We do appreciate all the help we get, really, as a couple, because we're both getting older now and not so good with our health. Very helpful. I mean, I know Sharon came through and discussed things with us, and she went through all our problems and asked us, if we needed help with various things in the house, things I wouldn't have dreamt of asking about, such as the radiators and the all sorts of things like that. She really went to a great deal of trouble to find out what help we needed, with all sorts of things around the house.
House, is that?
Yeah, that's right. So Sharon she was case advisor for Care and Repair. She was able to advise us about other things we could claim for, which I wouldn't have thought about. It was enough really for us to have been having help with the water heater, so we were very surprised that we could get help with other things as well. And she said if we ever wanted help in the future, I've got a name and everything that we can ring up and ask for help. Well, we found that the care and repair people they were vetted and we could trust them and they really were very helpful. Come to being any more helpful. So I know that if we needed any help, with anything like that, we would approach them again because we know that they were very efficient and they could help us, and we could trust what they said, and we knew we could understand what was going on as well. Yeah. Well, it's always good to have people that live locally and they know the area, and that that if we do want to get in touch, you can ring them up and they're not far away. I would have every confidence in doing it again, getting in touch again. Well, only that it was incredible how we got this help, because we never have dreamt of having help that way financially, because we just couldn't have afforded to have it done. So it was really a wonderful experience, and I've told loads of people about it, and I said, if you ever need help, to approach Care and Repair. So really, we could really recommend it, and really pleased with everything that's happened. Oh, I would say so, because I didn't know it was a voluntary sort of thing before I started talking to Sharon and everybody. So yeah, I know that they need to help and get some funds towards it, because then other people can be helped like we've been helped. So I think it's very important that people know about it and can help to keep it going, really, because it's a very valuable thing that you're doing.
I'm actually fully aware of the Leeds Directory. It's a fantastic service, actually. It's one of the things I always think should be replicated elsewhere, really, because I always think it's a case of having not just a single point, a first point of contact. It's actually a knowledgeable point of contact, actually, which I think the Leeds Directory is, actually.
Oh, well, it's good to hear you say that. I think that some areas do have a quality assured process for providers, but they some of them use their trading standards sections in local councils or bodies. So there's no one size fits all, but we're proud of it, and we're glad other people like it too.
Can I ask you what you think what benefits can be secured from giving individual recipients of care packages more personal responsibility? Is it something you're pushing for hard in Leeds? I'm talking about the notion of personal budgets, and indeed, do you think that means that we'll see an accelerated take-up of personal budgets?
Well, I'm a great believer in them for a start, but I think that every local authority will be hung, drawn and quartered by the government if they don't continue to drive forward in enabling a much more personalised response for people. What we're seeing year on year is local authorities increasing the number of people who are in receipt of personal budgets. But we know that you can have a local authority managed personal budget, which essentially often just provides the same services that people had before. And if we're really going to achieve the ambition of the policy and the government direction, what we need to be doing is making sure that those personal budgets either are translated into real finance for people to be able to choose much more flexibly what they do with money, and to make sure the services are there, of course, that for people to buy. Or we need to make sure that if it's a local authority managed budget, which some people prefer, but there is sufficient flexibility for people to buy, again, the sorts of services that are different to the norm. And I think that we know that there are huge challenges around some of the more traditional services. For example, some daycare services that many people now just want to spread out and do different things. We've got some fabulous examples locally of where people have done dramatically different things with their time. One gentleman who has dementia, who the last thing he wanted to do was to go to a day centre, and his carer was reluctant about that as well. His passion had been fishing all his life. And so we managed to, with the help of a voluntary organisation, find somebody else who loved fishing, who was really happy to take him fishing for the day. And so, how good is that in terms of a better outcome for somebody? And those are the sorts of things we want to be pressing and pushing for. And so, yes, we do want to drive a personalisation agenda much harder, much faster. And indeed, we'll all be held very much to account by the government if we don't succeed in it.
Now, we all know in the HIA community that Leeds has the benefit of a fantastic HIA in the form of Care and Repair Leeds. It's now headed by Ruth Cornelissen, who succeeded Bill Rollinson, a well-known local figure. It's a successful agency. Can I ask you what you think is the reasons for its success?
Well, I'm sure you'd probably need to ask them as well. But from my point of view, when I first came to Leeds 6 years ago, Care and Repair was absolutely established as a critical partner in the delivery of care across Leeds. And as I've got to know them a little bit better and seen what they do over that period, I think the things I would point to are the fact that they're absolutely grounded in user experience and what we now call co-production, working with people who use services to improve the offer that they give. They're absolutely rooted in the passion and desire to give a quality service. They're ambitious, they're flexible, they look ahead and they don't sort of just rely on what's known today, they think about tomorrow. They're looking all the time for other funding streams, not relying just on local authority dwindling resources and health service dwindling resources. They have actually established a credibility in Leeds that makes them a valued partner, so that housing, health and social care come together and want to invest in the services that they're delivering. And they've diversified a little, so they're not just doing the traditional home improvement agency activity around minor adaptations and some major adaptations and things like that. But they've not only are they supporting our Leeds directory, but they've also got a library for reminiscence work for dementia, a falls service, day activities, and the engagement of volunteers. So I think, I'm hopefully giving the impression they are a thriving organisation, but that's not just been handed to them on a plate. Through leadership, through engagement and involvement, they've involved the community, they've been a good partner to the statutory services, and they've been innovative. And really, in terms of going forward for tomorrow and the next day and then future years, those are the sorts of organisations that we will be supporting, because those are the sorts of organisations that come and bring added value to localities rather than just relying on the straight contracts.
What, in your opinion, are the initiatives that could be replicated easily in other parts of the country that have been blazed a trail by Leeds Care and Repair? I'm thinking about the highly successful network of older people's centres that the agency is involved in. And I'm also interested to know in what kind of barriers you see being presented.
I think we are entering really challenging times for innovation, because often innovation needs just a little bit of help, a little bit of money to start something, to try it, see whether it works, and then expand it. And we're fortunate in Leeds because many, many years ago, people like Bill Rollinson had a vision for how we could get better community engagement. And he blazed the trail at that time when there was a little bit more money around, and when we've been able to establish groups right across the city to support older people. However, what we've got to, I think, capitalise on now, when money is tight, is the fact that local authorities will have a new duty in relation to prevention. And actually having a look and having a rethink about how we can develop preventative services, I think, will be critical. And the sorts of things that we're doing is looking at what is the balance between the statutory sector and the voluntary sector in terms of who does what. And that might be around the assessment and care management function. It might be around brokerage of support for people who are on personal budgets and how they can get help to manage those budgets and to actually get a wide variety of options for their care. It might be around new working with the health service in terms of working on the well-being and the public health agenda, because of course public health has got ring-fenced finance. In Leeds, our neighbourhood networks that you've referred to are jointly funded by health, housing and social care, adult social services. So there are some opportunities to think about how we might look at other funding streams or develop the whole well-being of people so that they benefit from being able to live in their homes for longer. So I think the sorts of things we're looking at is saving money by working differently. That doesn't mean the statutory sector are ditching their responsibilities. They're holding on to their responsibilities, but they're recognising that some of them can be discharged in a different way, using the benefits of the voluntary sector, working in partnership and actually helping people more in the long run. So we've got, for example, we're seeking an investment bond, so new investment brought into Leeds. We're hoping that by changing the way we do things, that we'll save money, and the benefits of saving money will be shared with the voluntary sector, the investment bond and the local authority, so that we're trying to do new things, because if we carry on trying to do what we've done for the last 20 years, local authorities and communities will go bankrupt. That's the reality. We all have to be looking for opportunities of doing things differently and indeed better, because this is not about making the best of things. This is about thinking, how can we bring richer, more vibrant, thriving communities alongside the public sector, alongside the private sector and the voluntary sector, to be dealing with the needs that we have in the communities that are growing by the minute, but to deal with them in a different way.
And a word on the work of HIAs themselves. What's impressed you personally about the work of Care and Repair Leeds, and what do you think could possibly be emulated elsewhere?
Well, I mentioned a few things already about the things that have impressed me about Care and Repair. If I was to sort of probably put 2 or 3 added sort of strengths, one is their ambition. Secondly is their flexibility. Thirdly is their resourcefulness, in terms of looking elsewhere than the norm and typically sort of traditional ways of funding and delivering care services. And perhaps lastly is there a fundamental engagement with people who use the services. And really, I think if some of those ingredients are, and I'm sure they are actually present in loads of the HIAs nationally, I'm sure Leeds would want to be seen as an exemplar, but I'm quite sure there are plenty others around the country. But if those ingredients can be built upon, then I think the future is more certain and rosier than perhaps people might fear.
And what aspect of the work of HIAs do you think is underexploited, and what should we make more of?
Well, the fundamental core business of HIAs around the sort of improvements to houses give the HIAs enormous privilege in relation to working with vulnerable people and people who need help. And if you think about the sort of things that people need help when they're perhaps confined to their houses and their homes, there's the issue of social isolation, there's the issue of the falls prevention, which I've mentioned. I believe Care and Repair locally has also started an incontinence pad delivery service. And so it's about thinking more broadly about how could somebody going into somebody's home for a particular reason for a housing improvement, what other things might be able to be generated in terms of the support that's available, and how could Care and Repair either deliver it, or an HIA, how could they deliver it, or how could they be, if you like, the link in the chain for somebody to be able to help them. We have in Leeds a bit of a something that's happening in folklore now about us looking for the golden key for people. We have a wonderful person who gave a story about how she was caring for her husband who was reaching the end of his life. She had huge problems finding her way through the panoply of services that were available, but she was never sure which one at what time and how to get help. And she referred to being given a bunch of keys. And she saw a bunch of keys and a whole load of doors, and she was never sure which key opened which door. But when she got a single key, which was actually an integrated health and social care team, health and social care service, her life was transformed. And she had the most marvellous experience, and her husband was helped to die with dignity, which is what we would all want to happen. So if HIAs can get alongside the vision and the dream for local authorities and partners in health and communities to have that single golden key to help people through their lives when they need it, then we'll all be doing the public and citizens a good service, I think. And hopefully HIAs can join with us in that quest.
In these very tough times of economic uncertainty, when money's tight, what aspects of an HIA service are more resonant with commissioners and funders?
The sorts of services that we know we can invest in and save money elsewhere in the system. So, we've mentioned a lot of the sorts of services that HIAs already are part of. What local authorities and health service and everybody else is looking for these days is to say, right, how can we invest in services that will save money elsewhere? Now, that's a big problem in some ways, because preventative services, we know that there's probably not enough evidence that really can release cash to say, well, if you spend it on this, you don't have to spend it on that. But I think there is a growing body of knowledge being developed around early intervention and support, and more importantly, for people who are housebound and on their own, completely isolated, the sort of friendly faces, the sort of using volunteer capacity that may well not need the intensive intervention from a statutory agency. Those are the sorts of things that build confidence in people and help them to know where to get help. So I hope it's not repetitive, and I know it's not easy. This isn't going to be easy for any of us. Many local authorities are already having to cut back and use money differently. But some agencies, we know, for example, libraries are always around, sports centres, linking in with community-based activities that isn't the more traditional local authority services. It's about broadening the vision and perspective about how helping somebody in their own home, in the community, can help. And it's those sorts of things that increasingly local authorities will want to invest in when they can see them being effective.
Last question. With all the changes in the commissioning environment that we're aware of, going forward, are we likely to get anything radically different, or is it just going to be more of the same?
That's a very good question, and I wish I had a crystal ball to give you the exact answer to it. I think that the commissioning landscape, of course, means quite dramatic differences in the health service in terms of working differently with clinical commissioning groups and GPs, and of course some of the regional work through NHS England, of course public health coming to local authorities, and indeed of course children's services, looking at what the relationship is between adults and children's services. So what we've got is a radically different environment, because we've got lots of different players coming to the table now. I think that whilst some people might say, oh, well, it's just the same people being recycled, I think that my view would be that we've seen a lot of quite different players, and that is particularly through general practice and primary care, and working differently with community services. Some authorities, of course, are also seeing a combination of acute sector hospitals with primary care and community care services as well. So at the moment, I think it's early days to be expecting anything too radical, because all the new arrangements are just bedding down. But I think there are some green shoots of optimism that there will be some different things, and it entirely comes through the general practitioners and the health and wellbeing boards, and general practitioners having much more say in the prioritisation of funding at local levels. And so I think, again, we've talked already a little bit about housing, care and health coming together. I think that we will see that much more around health and wellbeing boards and around individual commissioning decisions. Where health and social care have already had pooled budgets to work with HIAs, I think that the successful HIAs who are delivering all the things we've already talked about, the GPs and others will see them as giving tremendous potential for developing things further. And I think that we will see potentially radical changes. I foresee in the next few years that health and care budgets will be brought entirely together, because I think that will be the way that we can jointly prioritise things. And when that happens, we'll all be looking for the most effective interventions. And so I think that there is a future for HIAs in a radical new landscape, but we need to keep working hard at the partnership. We need to keep making sure that the HIAs are fully engaged with knowing what's going on at local level through health and wellbeing boards, through their involvement with contracting managers and so on and so forth. But we also want to see the radical future being the new relationship between the citizen, providers of service and commissioners of service to work together in a new way to make sure that that public pound that we all spend in different ways is spent in the very best way.
Sandie, thanks very much for your time today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.